I think a lot of people are going to watch Warfare and they're going to try to ascribe a meaning to this film. Essentially, they're going to ask questions. Is this movie warfare anti-war? Is this movie military propaganda? Is it something in the middle? Is it immoral to display what this film is displaying? And there's going to be questions. Is this a liberal perspective on war? Is this a conservative perspective on war? All the questions that arise with modern politics and specifically war, which is politically entrenched by design. And I think for people wanting answers to these questions, Warfare is going to be a disappointment. Warfare is actually so stubborn in not giving these answers, and I think it's so intentional in that. And we can talk about why I think that's successful in a lot of ways and why I think it also can hold back the film. But essentially, Warfare is purposefully avoiding falling into this narrowness. Rather, I kept coming up with this statement while thinking of this movie about warfare, which is essentially this statement: war is. That's what this movie is about. Does it matter where this film lies in the political geography of the United States in 2006? It does, obviously, because of where these men find themselves, but these men don't seem to really know the nuances of the Iraq war as it goes on. What is the mission of this film? It doesn't really matter. Who cares? Like, all we know is what happens and what we see in front of us. The implications obviously are dire, but again, we're not ever given context onto what's going on in this movie. Who are the bad guys in this movie? Well, in the case of this specific troop that we're following, it's the people shooting at you. And if we were to follow it from the other side, it would be the people shooting at them. I think it's such a cop out to essentially talk about a war film and be like, well, the main point of this movie is war is hell. Yes, we all know that, but that is also the point of warfare, and I've never experienced a film this visceral in capturing that feeling. This movie is essentially asking the question of, this is what happens in war. Is this worth it? Is this worth putting any men through this? Warfare is directed by two men, one of them being Alex Garland, a really talented filmmaker who made my favorite film of last year, Civil War. This is also directed by a man named Ray Mendoza, who actually, this film is based on his real life service in Iraq in 2006. The events that happen in this film happen to Ray Mendoza. So, in some ways, this movie has the technical brilliance that has made Alex Garland such an exceptional filmmaker from Ex Machina on. And this film is also incredibly highly personal because this is Ray Mendoza reliving something extremely traumatic. And I would love to go into like the details of this plot. There is no real story. There's no defined mission in this film. This movie is 90 minutes, 75 minutes of this film being about the most traumatic thing any human being could experience. And what we are trying to get out of that and what we're trying to learn about that. All we really know about warfare is it's set in 2006 Iraq. And one of the characters played by the Pharaoh Woon-A-Tai, who is part of the cast of Reservation Dogs, he plays Ray Mendoza. So these events happen to Mendoza and his platoon and is told in real time within the film. From when the essentially the title card drops for the film Warfare on, that is all real time that we are experiencing this film. And as this movie very clearly says, this is based on the memory of those who lived it. So every detail is from somebody's memory from that day. And there's a lot to talk about in this review that I want to get into. Some of it I'm critical on, some of it I think is just expertly crafted in it. And that is going to be the balance of this film. How much of the technical brilliance it warps you into liking this film versus does the film need something more to withstand the lack of emotional development given to these characters. And enjoyment is critical towards your feelings towards this approach. If you can really dive into the technical brilliance of this film as I can, then some of the emotional gaps of this film, slash, some of the lack of knowing who these people are, you won't be bothered by it because you buy into what is being served to you. This movie is, by definition, a visceral experience. Watching this, I saw this at an IMAX, and I have to say, this was one of the most technically brilliant war films I have ever seen. This is one of the most technically brilliant films I've ever seen, just period. The sound in this movie is exceptional. There is a scene that involves a fighter jet kind of flying through the village. And it's one of the most awe shocking moments I've ever experienced in an IMAX ever. There's a few scenes with explosives that gave me the same reaction. This movie has it in spades of visceral, incredible technical just achievements of it. This is a technically brilliant film. I really want to highlight the sound design because that's the most notable of it, but the direction of this film's great, the acting of it, like all of that works in tangent to what this movie does so well and how jarring all of this is. The sound in particular is incredibly jarring throughout this film. And I was really enwrapped by that. Like everything about it. Like even the way, like I believe it's the Joseph Quinn character. He spends a lot of time on the floor in this movie, basically recovering from uh an injury that happens to him on the field. And basically most of his time in this movie is him screaming. And it's visceral. It's a gut reaction in this movie. And that's what makes this movie effective while I'm watching it. There's other stuff in this movie that people are going to be annoyed with, and it's the personalization in this. People, and I will include myself in this, are going to struggle, and there's this lack of understanding of who these human beings are that I noticed left me a little bit wanting more. This film does smartly avoid archetypes that we've seen in war films. You always have the hothead, you always have the leader, you always have the reluctant leader, you always have the pacifist, like you have the moral gray, you have the all of these character archetypes that we've seen in war films. None of them are really in this film. Some of them at moments act like this, but it's such a big platoon that everyone kind of morphs together. You really identify the characters by just remembering the actor. So some of them are easier to tell from others, especially if you're more familiar with those actors. Otherwise, they're kind of meant to blend together. The actors is how I keep the film straight. And despite this, the film does a great job of getting us on board. This has maybe one of the most, I want to say, brilliant openings to a film that I've ever seen in recent memory is what I'll say. Is there's this 2004 song slash music video. You've probably seen it by now, all the social media discussion of this, but it's the song Call on Me by Eric Prydz. They're watching the music video and it's like very loud. Like it's a very, you get into the movie theater and you're like, wait, what is this film? And like I thought I like walked into the wrong film or like something was playing, and then you see Melton and then you see like Will Poulter, and you're like, oh no, this is part of the movie. And like that's what this film does really well in this moment is like that's how we learn the platoon is, which is we're not supposed to learn them individually. We are just supposed to learn that in the first few minutes, these are really young men who are about to experience the most traumatic thing they've ever done in their life. But they're ultimately just young guys kind of enjoying a woman in a thong dancing for a music video. And that's essentially, we're learning that throughout the first 20 minutes. Like the first 20 minutes of this film, not a lot happens by design. And you see these young men as professionals in combat, what they do, how extremely trained they are. And then they're also a bit immature. There's like a really early sequence in the film where one of the platoon members is like humping the air, like, and like, they're all trying to stifle their laughter. Like, you get that context of them being like very young, very stupid young guys, like the lizard brain. And then you also get that there's these incredibly well trained soldiers until that facade like quickly breaks, which is kind of the point of this movie. The facade has to break. And it breaks about at the 20-minute mark or so, where a grenade is thrown into the house and all hell breaks loose for the rest of the movie. And this moment, like, marks kind of the end of adolescence, I think, in many ways. Now, that's not saying that these people hadn't experienced something before, but I noticed it. And tell me if any of you saw this in the movie. leave it in the comments below, and also subscribe to this channel, shameless plug. But if any of you saw this detail that I noticed, which is after the grenade is thrown, I believe we cut to Will Poulter, the actor's face. And in that moment, he legit looks like 10 or 12. Like, it's the fear and adolescence on his face. He legit looks like a child of how scared he looks. And it's like one of the most eerie, one of the most upsetting portrayals of just trauma and experience that I've ever seen in a film. And I just like, I can't get that visual image out of my head. I don't know if it was a special effect. I don't know if that was like intentional detail. I don't know if they just got lucky with how they shot that scene and they just so happened to catch that reaction from that actor. But I noticed it, and it like, that's kind of the point of this movie to me. And I think this film is littered with moments like that. It's these little details that make it feel like you can understand something that is ununderstandable. And I know that's not a word. You are supposed to be in a situation that you can't grapple with the reality. And this is the closest I can ever feel like I will get to understanding this feeling that's been described to me. With that said, there is a part of this movie that also leaves me a bit empty. And I think that emptiness, especially as we get to the third act, is intentional. And it's the emptiness is supposed to kind of fill this void in my, in my gut, which is any of this worth it? And I think that's like very clearly the intent of this movie. This idea, is any of this worth it? Like, there's this big moment, I would call it, like one of the big, like, if you want to call it side missions of this movie, is they're being told that they have to retrieve the equipment that kind of falls out during the explosion, which is retrieving their equipment, not leaving any of their equipment behind. And so you see these soldiers like running out into like gunfire and explosions to retrieve their equipment. In the meanwhile, around them, you see like the human limbs of their fallen brothers. And I think that's like so upsetting of a thought to think of, like the priorities of the the military industrial complex, the weaponry, over the sacrifice made by human beings who are using these weapons. And all I could think of was like, why? Like, why is this? And while thinking about that, I also thought about like how anticlimactic that is supposed to feel. And is this anticlimactic ending on purpose, or is it because the filmmakers don't want to have an opinion? And this was kind of like a big talking point last year with Garland's Civil War movie, which I think a lot of people misinterpreted that film, which I think people saw the apoliticalness of its main characters and ascribed apoliticalness to the film. I think the film's apolitical characters is the political nature of that film. Like, it's kind of a damnation that those characters can see themselves as apolitical, and how silly of a thing that is in the situation they are in. And I think this movie is trying to have like a kind of a similar thing where it's just like, oh, we don't necessarily need to have a side. This film can kind of speak for itself. The thing that I struggle with was I kind of sought more character perspective, or wanted more of a cohesive conclusion to this film, and that I wanted it to feel like it earned its hollowness. I don't know if it did that. And it's specifically like the film's last 1 or 2 minutes, which kind of breaks convention, and it kind of like, it's a real with the real Ray Mendoza and people depicted in this film, and it's kind of like them like experiencing making this movie. It's like a like quite literally almost a sizzle reel. And there is supposed to be a hollowness, I think, in it, and I think it's intentional. But I also like found myself kind of struggling with, why have this ending? That's not to necessarily say that it's a bad ending. It's a very noticeable, very memorable ending. It's just so jarring based on what we had. And some people who are going to describe this film as military propaganda, that's going to be a scene like that where it's just like, oh, we are lionizing the people who sacrificed themselves for a war that was unjust. And they were, this whole idea of American imperialism, this American like exceptionalism, going into another country and like trying to hoist your own values onto it, and the failures of this, Bush administration politics in the early 2000s. That also is going to be different for people because I grew up, in this era, and my understanding of this era from everything that I've learned and, growing up during this time was this was a mistake, and it's kind of commonly accepted in my generation as a mistake. It's something so broad in that way, and it's a zeitgeist that I was raised in, that maybe I am ascribing my own political beliefs or my own political ideology into warfare. I do think there was maybe just something missing from this ending that left this film without enough of a North Star that I couldn't fully get on board the way that I wanted it to, especially when I found the technical brilliance of this film up there. There's other stuff in this movie that work wonderfully. All the actors are really good in this movie. I wanted to highlight a few of them. I think Charles Melton is exceptional in this movie. He kind of comes in, he's in the beginning of the film, and then he like really comes back in the second half of this film. I thought he's such a star presence. Like he really captures your eye in this film. I thought Will Poulter was just exceptional in this movie. All of them. Gandolfini's son is in this movie. I thought he was really good in this movie. The actor that played Ray Mendoza, I thought was really good. Like everyone's really well cast in this movie, and I think this movie is definitely worth seeking out. And I also think this is a complicated movie that is going to leave a lot of people with more questions on how they feel about war than it's going to answer. This is not cut and clear war is bad, and this is also not cutting clear war is good. I personally believe the film is kind of showing that war is this, and is any of this worth it? And I think knowing who Alex Garland is as a filmmaker and hearing how he's talked about this film, but also Civil War, I find it pretty easy to understand what he's saying. And I can, give him that like anti war sentimentality that I think he's showing. But I also think the film doesn't always necessarily get there. So if that's what you're looking for this film, I think that's also kind of a tough sell. Um, and if you're looking for something that's, a little bit more rah America, I don't necessarily know if you're going to find your quote unquote American Sniper in this movie. I don't think it's as deeply patriotic as something like American Sniper is. I think it exists in the middle, and I think it purposely exists in the middle. And some people are going to be annoyed at something that sits in the middle. I found it provocative, even though I'm not sure if it fully worked for me. I'm giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars. So thank you so much for watching this video. I'll be back. I also on the same within 24 hours. I saw my order was Warfare, Sacramento, and then a Minecraft movie. So I'll have reviews out for all of those films in the next few days. So thank you so much for subscribing / watching this video. And to those of you who haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye.